RCOH. This is actually RC double bond O, and your hydrogen is bonded to carbon atom, this carbon. So RC double bond O H. You call this RC double bond OH as the functional group of your aldehyde. And the name of this functional group class is formyl, the formyl functional group. Of course, R, this would be, this is your alkyl group. The R represents your alkyl group. Okay? It's methyl, ethyl. Okay? Now, the common naming system class of your aldehyde follows the code trivial root plus the word aldehyde. For the IUPAC method, it follows the code alkanal. Okay? Alkanal. Dissecting class, your functional group of aldehyde, you have your carbonyl carbon. The C double bond O is carbonyl carbon. And bonded to your carbon in the carbonyl carbon is a hydrogen. Kaya you call the functional group as formyl functional group. Okay? This is an example of aldehyde. These are your aliphatic aldehydes. They are straight chain aldehyde. Acyclic aldehydes or aliphatic aldehydes. This is aromatic aldehyde. A functional group the functional group formyl is bonded to your aromatic ring, benzene. Okay? We must remember, class, the molecular formula for benzene is C6H6, right? There are 6 hydrogens in your benzene. There are also 6 carbons in the benzene ring. Therefore, for every carbon in the benzene ring, there is 1 hydrogen that is attached to it, right? It's aromatic. Now, it becomes an aldehyde if 1 hydrogen in your benzene is replaced by the functional group of aldehyde, which is classified as your formyl functional group. Okay? Formyl functional group. Now, in the common naming method class of aldehyde, we use the trivial root plus the word aldehyde to name your aldehyde in the common naming system. Trivial root comes as for 1 carbon, the trivial root is form. Okay, if your formyl group is attached to a hydrogen, you have only 1 carbon in your aldehyde. If you have only 1 carbon in your aldehyde, the common name is trivial root plus the word aldehyde. The common name must be formaldehyde if you only have 1 carbon in your aldehyde, right? Now, if you have 2 carbons, the trivial root is acet. Okay, acetaldehyde. If there are 3, it's propion. Propional plus the word aldehyde. Propionaldehyde. Pag 4 carbons, butyraldehyde. There are 4 carbon atoms. Pag 5, the trivial root is valer. That's why it's called valeraldehyde. If the aldehyde has 5 carbon atoms. If it has 6 carbons, it is named as capro. The trivial root is capro. Pag 6 carbons. So caproaldehyde is the common name of the aldehyde that has 6 carbon atoms. Pag 7, the trivial root is enanth. Enanth. E-N-A-N-T-H. Enanth. Pag 8 carbons, it's capryl. Pag 9 carbons, pelargon. Pag 10 carbons, it's copper, CaPr. So pag 10 carbons yung aldehyde, the aldehyde has 10 carbons, composed of 10 carbons, the common name would be capraldehyde. CaPr plus the word aldehyde. Kaya capraldehyde. Pag 6 carbons naman, it's capro. The trivial capro plus the word aldehyde. Kaya caproaldehyde. Okay, this is an aromatic aldehyde. You call this benzaldehyde. The formyl group is replacing one hydrogen in your benzene aromatic ring. Kaya ang tawag dyan ay benzaldehyde. This is an aromatic aldehyde, while these are aliphatic or acyclic aldehydes. Okay. For the IUPAC system, it follows the code alkanal. For alcohol, we follow the code alkanol. For aldehyde, we follow the code alkanal. Again, you have to select the longest conjugate carbon-to-carbon chain. This is the parent chain. The parent chain must always include the carbon that has the functional group or the functional carbon in your aldehyde, the formyl carbon. Okay? The formyl carbon must always receive the lowest number possible. And it will also be carbon number, it will always be carbon number 1 because the formyl functional group is a terminal functional group. It is always located at the end of your aldehyde. Okay? Then follow the code alkanal. So the alkane name, you drop E, then add Al to get the correct IUPAC name of your aldehyde. This is an example. How many carbon atoms do you have in this aldehyde? There are 2. What is the alkane name for 2 carbons? Ano ang alkane name ng 2 carbons?
Ethane.
Ethane, correct. Ethane. So, palitan mo yung E ng Al. We follow the code alkanal. Ethanal. This is, of course, propanal, right? Because there are 3 carbon atoms here. This is butanal. You have 4 carbon atoms in the aldehyde, kaya butanal, right? Now, this is what you call as the straight chain group in your aldehyde, while this is a substituent. May alkyl group substituent yung aldehyde mo. Right? You have to identify your parent chain. The parent chain is the one that has the longest carbon-to-carbon chain. And of course, carbon number 1 must be always your carbon in the functional group. So this is carbon 1. Where's my carbon 2? And my longest chain has 5 carbons, right? So this is pentane. At carbon number 2 is my substituent methyl. So I call this 2-methyl, then 5 carbons, 2-methyl pentanal. 2-methyl pentanal. Okay? 2-methyl pentanal. Now, to give the common name of this, what would be the common name of this class? Anong trivial pag 2 carbons? Anong trivial root class pag 2 carbon atoms? Acetaldehyde. Pag 3,
Propoy.
propion. Propion aldehyde. Propion. Pag 4,
Butyl.
butyraldehyde. Very good. Now, ito. Ano ang IUPAC name nito? 2-methyl petal. But what would be its common name? The straight chain carbon has 5 carbons and have a substituent methyl group bonded to carbon number 2. Right? To give the complete common name of this, I now use Greek letters. Greek letters to identify the carbon to which the alkyl group or the substituent is bonded to when naming these aldehydes in the common naming system. I use the Greek letters. Now, using Greek letters class are 4 carboxylic acid are 4 hydrocarbon derivatives that have terminal functional group. The Greek letters are used to name hydrocarbon derivatives that are used to name the common name of hydrocarbon derivatives in which their functional group is located at the end of the molecule. Call this your terminal functional group. So one is your aldehyde, because the functional group of your aldehyde is always located at the end. You will not see this functional group at the middle of the hydrocarbon chain in your alkyl group, but you always see this at the end of the chain. So you call this functional group as terminal functional group. And if the hydrocarbon derivative has a terminal functional group, to identify or to give its common name correctly, class, is to use Greek prefixes to identify the carbon number to which the alkyl group or any substituent is bonded to the parent chain. Okay, what are these Greek letters? Of course, you know this: alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon. Alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, and so forth and so on. My phi, yeah. Now, the alpha carbon, listen, the alpha carbon is the carbon next to the functional carbon or the carbon in the functional group. So in this case, in this molecule, in aldehydes, alpha carbon is the carbon next to the carbon in the functional group. This is the carbon in the functional group. So this must be my alpha carbon. This is my beta carbon. This is my gamma carbon. This is my delta carbon. Then epsilon carbon is the one that is next to this carbon atom. Okay? Now, if you may identify the correct common name of this aldehyde, my methyl group is bonded to my alpha carbon. So I call this alpha methyl. What is the trivial root, class, used to denote that there are 5 carbons in my parent chain? Ano yung trivial root pag 5 carbons?
Valer po.
Valer. Very good.
Valer.
Valer. Very good. So this would be named as alpha methyl valeraldehyde in the common naming system. Alpha methyl valeraldehyde. And this is your aromatic aldehyde. We call this your benzene carbaldehyde. Now going back to this, if these methyl groups were bonded to this carbon, what is the Greek letter denoting this carbon here, class? Anong Greek letter dito?
Beta po.
Beta. So I call this, a common name would be beta methyl valeraldehyde. Pag dito,
Gamma.
Eta.
beta gamma methyl valeraldehyde. Gamma methyl valeraldehyde. Okay? Question, class? Do you have
None
any
po.
question? None. Okay, very good. What about the IUPAC name? The IUPAC method, we have taken that up in the previous slide. So we now move to the next hydrocarbon derivative. This is your ketone. This is your ketone. The general formula for ketone is RC double bond OR. Now, if this is an aldehyde, this is RC double bond OH, right? So the hydrogen in a hydroxyl group for aldehyde that is bonded to the carbonyl carbon in aldehyde is replaced by an alkyl group. So we may qualify your aldehydes and ketones also to be functional isomers, just like your alcohols and your ethers. It will classify them also as functional isomer. The functional group of your aldehyde is your C double bond O group. You call this your carbonyl functional group. If we may still recall the functional group of alcohol, it's OH, called that hydroxyl. For your aldehyde, C double bond O H, right? Kaya formyl. For ketone, it's your C double bond O. Call this your carbonyl functional group. Okay? These are examples of ketones. This is the functional group of your ketone carbonyl. This R, an alkyl group, another alkyl group. Alkyl group, another alkyl group. Alkyl group, another alkyl group. An alkyl group, another alkyl group. Okay. Now, to name your ketone in the common naming system class, you have to mention the name of the alkyl group followed by the word ketone. Now, the alkyl groups are named in alphabetical order. Okay? The alkyl groups in your ketones, the two alkyl groups are named in alphabetical order to give the correct common name of the ketone, plus of course the word keto. This one, what are the alkyl groups? What are the alkyl groups, class, that you have in your ketone? You have your methyl and methyl alkyl groups. Pareho lang, kaya you call them collectively as dimethyl ketone. Dimethyl ketone. Now this one, this ketone here, what are the alkyl groups? You have your
Ethyl and methyl.
methyl and ethyl, correct yan. Methyl and ethyl. You name ethyl first in alphabetical order, so ethyl, methyl, ketone would be the correct common name of your ketone molecule. This is, what are the alkyl groups?
Ethyl and propyl.
Ethyl and propyl. And propyl, normal propyl as opposed to your isopropyl. So, you name the alkyl groups in alphabetical order first. So this must be ethyl and propyl ketone. Ethyl and propyl ketone. What about this ketone here? What are the names of the alkyl group attached to my carbonyl functional group of ketone?
Butyl and ethyl.
Butyl and ethyl. Okay, butyl alkyl group and ethyl alkyl group. To give the correct common name in alphabetical order, it should be N-butyl, B first before E. N-butyl ethyl ketone would be the more correct common name of this ketone molecule. Any question, class?
None po.
Okay, very good. Moving to your IUPAC system, IUPAC method for naming ketones, still you have to First rule, you should always follow this. You have to identify the parent chain, the longest continuous carbon to carbon chain, but that must include the longest continuous carbon to carbon chain. Class must always include the carbon in your functional group, the carbonyl carbon. We call that carbonyl carbon, the carbon in the carbonyl functional group. Okay, again, you have to number your longest carbon to carbon chain from the end that will give you the lowest number possible for the carbon in the functional group, for the carbon in the carbonyl group. Okay, it must always receive the lowest number possible. And followed by the suffix ONE. So the code is alkanone for your IUPAC name for ketone. Alkanone. This one, how many carbons do I have in my molecule class?
3 po.
3. There are 3. Where will I start numbering my continuous chain, my chain? So I'll give the lowest number possible for the carbon in the carbonyl group.
Anywhere po.
Anywhere, right? Anywhere. 1, 2, 1, 2. That is propanone. You call this your propanone. Kahit saan naman dyan, 2 pa rin. Right? What about this class? This is 3-pentanone. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 3-pentanone. Right? Ba't nilagyan ko pa ng 3? Because my carbonyl carbon can be located here. Right? I can have a ketone that has a methyl and a propyl alkyl group. That is where my ketone, I'll get 2-pentanone. I'll get 2-pentanone. If this carbonyl carbon is in this position, and this methylene group is in this position of your carbonyl group, I will call that now as 2-pentanone. So I have to include the number to denote that this is your 3-pentanone as opposed to have your 2-pentanone. The newer one class or the latest is pentan 3-one. Pentan 3-one. This is, how many carbon atoms do I have?
4.
4. That's butanone, right? Butanone. It's 2-butanone. Although you don't include 2, but still your carbonyl carbon, the functional group still be carbon number 2. Right? Kahit ilagay ko pa dito yung carbon, pagpalitan ko itong dalawang to, dito naman ako mag-start pag number 1, 2. Carbon number 2 kayo. So needless to place 2. Dito kailangan. Kasi this carbonyl carbon, pwede di siyang ma-position dito, itong methylene pupunta dito. So 1, 2. Carbon number 2 na yung aking carbon in my carbonyl carbon. Nakuha, class?
Nakuha po.
Okay, very good. This is, of course, how many carbons?
6.
6. So this is 3. At carbon number 3 is my carbonyl carbon. So 3-hexanone or hexan 3-one. Pwede bang maging 2-hexanone? Pwede maging 2-hexanone, class? If I transfer my carbon dito ko ilagay sa position number 2, ito ay ilagay ko dito. So 1, 2 na siya. That would be 2-hexanone. Right? So it is very important that you place 3 as the number of the carbon in the carbonyl group for hexanone, because your carbonyl carbon may also be located at position number 2 in your hexanone molecule. Correct? So this is 3-hexanone. Very important. Yung mga numbers na yan. Dito, at saka dito. Dito, hindi na kailangan. Ito, how many carbon atoms do I have?
7.
7 po.
How many?
7.
7. Very good. 7. What is the IUPAC name of this? I number my chain 1, 2, 3. I should number my chain from this end, so I'll give the lower number possible for this carbon in my carbonyl group, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Because if I were to start from here, 1, 2, 3, 5 na yan. Right? 5. So dapat dito. 3-heptanone. 3-heptanone or heptan 3-ol. Pag nandito ang carbonyl ko, pag pinagpalit ko to, nandito ang carbonyl ko. Anong pangalan?
4-heptanone.
Very good. 4-heptanone. Very good, Ian. Pag dito ang carbonyl ko,
3-heptanone.
3-heptanone. Very good. What? Your name is? Anong pangalan mo, Ian?
Kirsty Vedad po.
Ah, yan. Si Miss Vedad. Right. Si Miss Vedad. 3-heptanone pa rin. Eh, pag dito,
2-heptanone.
2-heptanone. Very good, Miss Vedad. 2-heptanone. Pag dito,
2-heptanone.
2-heptanone pa rin. Very good. You should always start from the end. It will give you the lowest number possible for the carbon in the carbonyl group. Question? Any question, class?
None po.
Okay. Brother Blake lang. Next is your ethers. Next hydrocarbon derivatives, ether. The general formula for ether, class, is this one, ROR. ROR. If you recall, your alcohol is ROH, right? So hydrogen in your alcohol functional group is replaced by the R group. Okay, by an alkyl group. Okay, you may also qualify your alcohols and ethers as functional isomers. They are functional isomers, just like your ketones and your aldehydes. Therefore, this would be this will now be qualified as the functional group of your ether. You call this your alkoxyl functional group. The OR is the alkoxyl functional group of your keto, of your ether, of your ether, of your ether, the OR. While for alcohol, it's OH, right? These are examples of your ether. This the alkyl group in the functional group. Yeah, samples of ether. This is, of course, an aromatic ether. An aromatic ether. Now, in the common naming system, in naming your ether class, we follow the code alkyl. That's the alkyl name. So there are two alkyl groups because there are two alkyl groups attached to your oxygen. So you name them separately if they are not the same, if they are not identical alkyl groups. So alkyl plus another alkyl plus the word ether. Okay? Plus the word ether. But this is common naming system class. But the first alkyl group that you're going to name would be the alkyl group in the alkoxy group. Okay? The first alkyl group that you're going to name is the one that is in the alkoxy group. So ito, this would be the name. This would be the alkyl group that should be named first. But since these are both alkyl, these are identical methyl alkyl groups, I call them collectively as dimethyl ether. Dimethyl ether. Okay? This one, I name first my alkyl group in the alkoxy group. My alkyl group in the alkoxy group class is methyl. Right? So I name this first following the code alkoxy, following the code alkyl ether, I mean. So I call this methyl ethyl ether. Okay? Methyl ethyl ether. Not this one. The name is not alpha, is not correct because what is named first is the alkyl group not found in the alkoxy group. You must remember, you have to name first class the alkyl group that is located in the alkoxy group. This diethyl ether, because the alkyl groups are the same, they are identical, they are both ethyl groups, so you call them collectively as diethyl plus the word ether. Diethyl ether. This one, what is the name of the alkyl group in the alkoxy group class? This is the alkoxy group, the functional group of your ether, I mean. We have identified this kanina. What is the name of the alkyl group in this alkoxy group?
Propyl.
Propyl. So this alkyl group's name first followed by the other alkyl group. So the more correct name for this would be N-propyl ethyl ether. N-propyl ethyl ether. Paki-check nyo class ha, pag napasa na to sa inyo. This one, the alkyl group in the alkoxy group first, it's methyl. Methyl phenyl. Phenyl plus the word ether. Methyl phenyl ether would be the common name of this ether. Okay, for the IUPAC system class for naming ether, the code is alkoxyalkane. The code is alkoxyalkane. So you name first the alkoxy group followed by the name of the other alkyl groups ending in ANE. So alkane na ang pangalan nun. Okay, like this one. What is the alkyl group in the alkoxy group? This is the alkoxy group class. Anong pangalan nito? Methyl. Kaya following the code alkoxyalkane, this would be named as methoxymethane. Methoxymethane. While this is also methoxy the alkyl group in the alkoxy group's name first, following the code alkoxy plus the name of the other alkyl group ending in A and E. So this would be methoxyethane. Methoxyethane. This is ethoxy. This is ethoxyethane because this is the alkoxy group. It has the ethyl alkyl group. So ethoxy, following the code alkoxy alkane. Ethoxyethane. Ethoxyethane. This is, what is the name of the alkoxy group?
Propane po.
Propane. So we call this propoxyethane. We call this propoxyethane. Wala yung mga numbers, class. Numbers are not involved, are not included in your ether's common name. Hayupak name, I'm sorry. Ether, hayupak name. So this is methoxybenzene. Methoxybenzene and not phenoxymethane. You always name the alkyl group, the alkoxy group first in the IUPAC system. And in the common naming system, it's the alkyl group in the alkoxy group that's named first, following the code alkoxy alkane. So this is named first, followed by the other alkyl group. Methoxybenzene, and this is propoxyethane. Question, class? Do you have question? May tanong kayo, class? Okay.
Nan po.
Okay, none. So this, ito, succeeding transparency class of slides are showcasing the different chemical properties of your aldehydes, ketones, and your ethers. Now we'll do this when we move to our on-site experiments, which will start on the 24th. Our date is 24, 25, 26. Right? So only those who passed or submitted their consent form, parents' consent form would be allowed to come in the university. And a reminder, on the 24th, you have to bring also your parent consent form, your signed parent consent form, ha? Don't forget. You have to bring your the parent consent form signed by your guardian or your parent. Question here, class?
Sir,
Yes.
bale, ipiprint pa po namin yung consent form.
Yeah.
Okay po, thank you po.
Notarize yun, ha? Notarize yun.